Mr. Navalkar, Mr. Sriram, members of the jury and dear friends, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to chair this wonderful function. The Crossword Awards have gathered a lot of respect and esteem in a very short while, not because there are no good awards, but there are very few believable awards. And this award has the reputation of being given to people who actually deserve it, and not on the basis of things which in Hindi we call sahityetar, for extra literary reasons. So I congratulate all of those who have been shortlisted for this award. And I think it is a stamp of authority and excellence that goes a long way to convince the readers that they're reading something written with a lot of passion and intelligence. I've often wondered in the last few years, with the rapidly shrinking vocabularies and linguistic base, how long and how much can one sustain the literary world? I feel literature in any case never dies out. It will just mutate and assume a form to fit the new field that has been given to it. However, I feel that in India we are so fortunate to have so many regional languages, and yet it is a pity that a lot of us, by the time they are in their 30s, become monolingual. If you write in Hindi, you only write in Hindi. If you write in English, you only write in English. And then you become arch defenders of a faith which is against sahityetar, extra literary. And that's not good. Not good at all. My grandmother, who got married very young and had very little formal education, knew 7 Indian languages. She traveled far and wide with her large family, and she could speak Gujarati, Marathi, Bengali, and of course Kumaoni, Kutchi, and several other dialects. My mother knew Gujarati, Bengali, English, and Hindi. I know English, Hindi, Sanskrit, and some Marathi. And my children only know English and Hindi, and probably their children will grow with just one language. I find that, the tongues are disappearing in our mouths. They're not disappearing around us, but they're disappearing in our mouth. I was talking to my friend Sujata Bhatt, who's a poet of great brilliance, and she said that sometimes she lives abroad, and she said it's like I have 2 tongues in my mouth, and they keep seeking each other out, and eventually one tongue gives way to the other one, which takes dominance, and yet I feel there is something missing, which I wanted to say, but I could not, because for that I needed the other tongue. So I think that's a dilemma we have to sort out, no matter how the size of the books or the form of the books changes, how the publishing industry changes, but I think the writers have to really sort the problem of language. I should not even refer to it as a problem. The richness of language, how can we try and tap it? I feel very saddened when I meet college students who are taking lessons in French and Spanish, but not in Tamil or Gujarati or Bengali. The Delhi University has been forced, many of the colleges have been forced to close down their sections on Indian languages. And it surprises me, more than it distresses me, it surprises me how, if you are writing, how could you be disinterested in tongues which reside so close to your own? Even if you go to a tailor, you take him a new fabric, and he is delighted as a professional. He'll take it out in the light and look at it, look at the weave. He will appreciate the way, and then he will tell you how it is he's going to cut it. He'll ask you where you got it from, Then he'll draw a thread and examine the thread. It's a professional delight. You show a good piece of carpentry to a carpenter, he's again delighted, and he will take it again under a lamp and examine how it has been put together. But as writers, how can we lack curiosity? To me, a good piece of literature is always marked by the intense curiosity that it brings to the fore, the restlessness of spirit. And probably that is why writers, brilliant writers particularly, are not very good human beings to associate with. Because, in Hindi, I don't know about the English literary world so much, but in Hindi, when one was in school, one was told, हमारे लेखक बहुत महान हैं, उन्होंने राष्ट्रीय संग्राम में हिस्सा लिया, ये किया, वो किया. But my mother was a well-known writer also, so a lot of writers would come in, and of course we sort of grew up, and I found that they were brilliant writers, and some of them are timeless. They have given timeless literary pieces, but they're not quintessentially, very good social beings as such, in the sense that they were selfish, they were loud, they quarreled with each other, and they would not be past pulling somebody down who was doing exceptionally well or writing a nasty piece about a fellow writer. But when they sat down to write, then they were sitting on the Vyaspeeth, where they would really, streamline their thinking and so on. So I think we really have to appreciate, Mr. Sriram referred to the fact that literature makes us better human beings. I don't think it makes us better human beings in the sense in which we were taught one can be a better human being. But you will find that people who read a lot are usually people who understand the basic ironies of life, and therefore they are much less full of themselves than those who read very little. Even among the political leaders, I can always identify people who are well-read, because they usually have a sly sense of humor. I've never met a more solipsistic, self-regarding race than the politicians. As a journalist, I interacted. They're intensely rooted in themselves and intensely conscious of the power that they wield and seek. And yet, you find that the ones who read a lot are always marked by a self-denigrating chuckle at the end of their pompous words. And I think that's a lovely human quality. And if literature can make us aware of that, I think it has done its job. We should not expect literature to do the kind of things we expect schools or school teachers or mothers or fathers to do, beat people into their senses and make them more responsible. That has to come from their own. It has to be an integrated part of their personality and the kind of atmosphere in which they live. But what literature does is, it's like journeying through life with an intensely and extremely intelligent and perceptive person. And the journey that you take, nothing dies out. It kind of curls up into a film, and you carry it like a snail on your back all your life. So the books that you have liked, the phrases or the pages that you almost memorize on cue, they stay with you always. And it gives you a greater insight into life and the many layers of human personality, of human interaction, and the essential malleability of things around you. And I think that is what literature sets out to do. We should not demand more of it. Because, if we demand of literature that it makes us into better human beings, then we are doomed to have literature which will be terribly boring, terribly thus. It may win many awards, and it may win Sahitya Academy awards particularly. But it will not be literature that we love and we cherish. And therefore, I think we should celebrate literature as a feast of life, where the disorderly life in all its disorderliness, all its bitchiness, all its goodness, all its civility, humility, and also all its pompousness, is put before us, and we travel with the writer and we realize what things, and we have all said, I wish I had said this, or I know exactly what he said what I wanted to say but couldn't say. And I think that's the greatness of literature. That is what we celebrate. And I'm very happy to, I of course, have been pursuing the awards and the people that they've gone to. And most of the awardees have subscribed to this ethos without really it being codified. So I think we should let literature breathe. Like good wine, it should be allowed to breathe. We should not come down very heavily on literature. Unfortunately, with television and with all the social media and everything, everybody wants their 15 minutes of fame and, these walls and blogs and stuff, Everybody, मैं भी मुन्ना भाई बनना चाहता हूँ, kind of a, it unsettles me. It's something that either happens or doesn't happen. In Hindi we have a saying, राग साग और पागड़ी कभी कभी बंध जाए. Tying a turban, cooking a good meal, and creating a beautiful piece of music are things which happen sometimes, and sometimes they don't happen. But when it happens, then it becomes a piece of art. And I think it is this unpredictability that keeps the writers and the producers of literature also on their toes. Because when you set out, you don't really know whether you are really going to produce something worthwhile or whether it is, just going to be a Sila Pataka. But I think it is this beauty that literature brings to you. So even the bleakest, the darkest moments, you are compelled to read it because it is opening up something to you which cannot be done in anything else. Very often people say, हमने सितार सुना और उस पर कविता लिख दी है, या हमने डांस देखा उस पर हमने पेंटिंग बना दी है. I think that's largely nonsensical, because whatever had to be said the best in a particular medium is being said by the maestros. ये कहना कि हमने रविशंकर का सितार सुना और उस पर हमने ये कविता लिख दी है. Talk about your kavita. It can be good, it can be bad, and it can be mediocre. Mostly it is mediocre. But you cannot say that you have captured, this inclination to possess a celebrity artist. I think one has to get out of this. And so with these stray and silly thoughts which are very personal, I once again congratulate all those who have been shortlisted, and I thank you all once again for inviting me here.